Привет, дорогие, мы снова в прямом эфире. У нас в гостях Деченом, Турман. Снова вторая часть. Да, сегодня мы продолжим наше интервью. Всем привет, всем намасте.
Намасте.
Намасте. Мы продолжаем интервью, вторая часть. Мы поговорим о граха-йога, да?
Yes, we're going to talk about graha yoga today, among other questions.
Да. И, значит, сегодня в прямом эфире Елена Куратова, преподаватель йоги, прекрасная девушка, Аксинья Леус, ваш постоянный продюсер этого блога, и Деченом Турман, преподаватель йоги Дживамукти йога. Мы сейчас находимся в Нью-Йорке. Вот. И первый вопрос такой. Мы также будем говорить по-английски, переводить по-русски, будем стараться. Вот. Так что следите за нами и задавайте вопросы. Значит, first question is about, what do you think about Russian yogi style? So it's a serious face, serious mood, and to do everything very accurate.
Well, I don't know. That's a bit of a cliche. But I know of Russian people is they have a big imagination, and you can see it in the architecture. They have big hearts, very romantic people. And of course, the Russian culture always values physical fitness. You know, so yes, the Russian yogis are very strong. And of course, you have the connection to Mongolia and Kazakhstan and the Buryats and the mountain people, you know, lots of cultures mixing together. You also have the Christian Orthodoxy, Russian Orthodoxy. So you have a lot of spirituality in the people. Even in the strict communist time, the religion was underground, but it was well cared for during that time, and you know, it is coming back out to flourish. And yogis, Russian yogis are, you know, very polite, very respectful of their teachers. They take care of them, they feed them, they make sure they're living somewhere good. They value teachers in society in general, I think, if you compare to USA. USA, teacher is bad job, you know, school teachers. Yeah. In Russia, I think they're a little more respected, you know, because.
You mean the Russian teachers, yogi teachers, or like generally?
Just general.
Maybe you don't know. Actually,
is it also struggling like American teachers?
Struggling and low pay.
Low pay.
Yeah.
Oh God. I know, maybe there's a problem. Well, okay, so both America and US and Russia to improve the quality of life for school teachers. Okay, telling you Putin and Trump, you be bad boy, yeah, okay, cool, but pay the school teachers more.
Okay, we also have to speak about it. Could you translate, Lena, please?
Но вкратце, я думаю, что вы поняли, о чем идет речь. Мы спросили вообще о том, есть ли какой-то образ вот, занимающихся даже в России. У нас какой-то очень такой серьезный подход к йоге, всегда такие напряженные, собранные лица здесь. Вот. Но разговор у нас утек в ту степь, что Россия очень многонациональная страна. И вот чтобы отметил именно Дечен, это есть уважение к учителю, ну вообще почтение к учителю. Вот. Но мы решили сказать о том, что попросить Трампа и Путина увеличить заработную плату. 7,4.
Invest in the children. Invest in the children. Very good for the economy.
Our president actually in one interview told that, hey teachers, it's actually your decision to be a teacher. Everyone knows that it's a very bad salary.
Oh,
but
that old story.
This is your way. This is your way to share your knowledges to the people. Yes, its salary is not really well, but you should accept it.
Wow. Okay, well, what are you going to do? But we keep saying, we just have to ask. If you don't ask, then you never get it. Okay? If you ask and someone says no.
В общем, в любом случае нам нужно просить об этом, заявлять об этом, и манифестировать свои идеи.
At least you have
Может быть, когда-нибудь.
the self-respect that you asked. If you assume no, then it's like a double defeat.
What do you think we could do to better connections between our cultures? How we could maybe we could connect our cultures through the yoga or spiritual knowledges? What do you think?
Well, yes, I think that's happening. I think
right now.
Yeah, right here.
Okay, thank you.
I think what you're doing because you're making the interview. I'm here.
Да, думаю о том, как бы наши культуры породнить еще больше. И вот один из способов это как раз через коммуникацию, через интервью, через обмен знаниями, ну, в том числе и знаниями йоги, как-то объединяться и двигаться дальше. And my second question will be about, you know, that during the class you may find out that every mat is inhabited by an ego, by some emotions. You know, and sometimes people transmit those emotions to the teacher, and those emotions, they can be angry, maybe frustrated, or something else, you know. And how do you manage to help them to go through those emotional states through the practice? Do you use like, you know, breathing techniques, or maybe some particular words, or maybe you just, you know, make them sweat to forget about everything? What methods do you usually use?
Oh, Lena, that's a great question. Well, I think you have to have your emotions, or your emotions will have you. And what you're talking about is a modern concept in yoga, very popular nowadays, called safe space and trauma sensitivity. Right? Trauma sensitive yoga. It's a very, very popular topic. Okay, you can find many online courses and in trauma sensitive yoga. And this means that people are encouraged to express themselves in a way that they might not express themselves in their personal life, or in their professional life, or in their political life. So although I made a joke about the big guys, I'm not saying anything good or bad, because no matter who you support in politics, when you come into the yoga classroom, you're just a yogi. You know, you're just a body. You're a human being. You know, and this common connection with humanity, you know, is vital for politics to not get out of control. You know, as much as we're fighting liberal, conservative, young, old, men, women, all the different divisions, you know, that we're uniting, you know, as much as we are dividing. And but so some teachers, they don't like emotion. They want, you know, quiet, peace, disconnect from emotion. Emotions are not real. Emotions are just ego. Ego. Other teachers say, no, give me more emotion. Scream and shout. Laugh, cry, go crazy.
Yeah, it's like probably in New York.
Well, so yeah, New York, we have a lot of
studios people. And classes where people could impress their emotions, like.
Okay. Whoa.
I heard about this type of classes.
Yes, and I mean, more nowadays I'm a little less provocative. I used to very much provoke rather than soothe, especially to go contrary to expectations. It can be, though, very different from one student to the next. So one student might be acting out like, in Shavasana. Just I had one girl, she was having a breakup in her life, and she just would kick her heels and punch her fists into the ground in Shavasana and start screaming. Okay. Mm-hmm. And because she knew it's Dechen's class, so that's okay. All right. Oh, it was Dechen's class. That's okay. Oh, then I can do whatever I want, you know. And because I encourage it, you know, and I really believed in safe space. Now, what about the student next to her? Right? The student next to her might be wanting to sleep or go in a very subtle state or something that they can't when there's a, you know, violent, angry person next to them. You know, so at a certain point, then they ask me, they say, like, you know, you have to control that person from screaming. And, you know, it's a not the situation the teacher likes to choose one student over the other. And sometimes it's also why, again, safe space is also for the teacher. Okay, not only for the students. Okay. And there's a lot of concepts, because yoga is a commercial form, okay, and the students are paying money to the owners, okay. The teacher sometimes gets pushed down, okay, because the customer is always right, okay, and if a customer is unhappy, they complain to the owner, right? And then the teacher, you know, is in the middle, squished, you know, and then this is a little tricky because, again, you may have one student who is trying very hard, and the teacher says, don't try so hard. But next to the other student, there's a student who's not really trying their hardest. Mm-hmm. You get their heart. You're not doing enough. You're lazy. Blah, blah, blah. You know, and then someone comes in from the outside and says, you're being nice to one person. You're being cruel to another person. Are you playing favorites? You know, or are you, you know, what's your motivation? And this again becomes why it's safe space. You know, what happens in the yoga studio mostly stays in the yoga studio.
So no just regular recipe, I mean, yes, so it depends on the situation. Or maybe you use some special techniques or like meditations or something, or just...
Well, sure. No, very specifically, there are the asanas, okay, are exercises that correspond. There's some systems of healing that are incomplete. Mm-hmm. The records are damaged, especially the Indian Ayurvedic charts of the body mm-hmm. Are damaged more than the Chinese ones that have acupuncture, mm-hmm. specific points. And when you compare the acupuncture meridians of the body, that are well known, to the 5 which govern the 5 major organs and govern 5 major emotions. And so a little bit, you know, if I had a private client or long-term student mm-hmm. in group class, okay, and I might notice they are either weak in certain emotions, like they don't express anger, or they don't express sadness, they don't have any humor, mm-hmm. or they're never hungry, or whatever the other 5 are. Then sometimes making them do the yoga postures that correspond to the emotions, okay, mm-hmm. and gives them a chance to strengthen their connection to those emotions through movement.
Yeah, that's such interesting. And do you have like classes where you maybe show these connections with the special points on the body, special dots, and the special asanas, just to impress this thing?
Well, it's a bit...
It's an interesting thing. Everybody's talking about this, but nobody... I actually don't know a teacher who would make such a class?
Well, because it's not exact.
It's not exact.
Emotions very overlapping each other. So as soon as you try to make something, as soon as you say something, right, like stretching this way, is for joy, and stretching this way is for grief, okay, because this is heart meridian here, and this is lung meridian here, okay, and heart is about joy, and lung is about grief, let's say, for example. Okay. You can use these things as general guideposts, but you can't bet the farm on it. You can't assume, or then you invite skeptics, you invite, prestigious doctors to invalidate your hocus pocus claims, or you have people believing you no matter what you say, because they feel they want to believe what you say, and then no matter what you say, they start to project on you. So that you have to be a little careful with that. Within the yoga system, like say Jivamukti yoga, Sharon Gannon has a lovely class that's called chakra tuning. Okay, chakra tuning, and each chakra is a category of postures, basic category of postures, and you add the mantras, the bija mantras for those chakras, and as you practice those, you talk about the different types of relationships.
Like, for example, backbendings for heart opening.
Yes, backbending in chakra tuning is for people that have hurt you. People that have hurt you, your relationship to them. Okay, so that's really in the middle of the sequence, and so yes, forgiveness is encouraged, but it's not my favorite one. Forgiveness is of course valuable and important, but at the same time it has to come with the right layers. Sometimes people want to jump right to forgiveness, but they don't get into apology, or so for some people it's too early to forgive. The wound has not really been recognized and healed. The call, and if they forgive, they're just going to get wounded again, and then that's actually bad, right? Let's say someone is in a abusive relationship. Okay, it might not be a good idea for them to forgive. It might be better for them to fight back. But you see, this is why there's yoga teachers that take risks, and there's yoga teachers who are safe. Okay? And yoga teachers that only teach forgiveness and never encourage a student to fight back are being safe. Okay? Because if you tell a student to fight back, okay, then they go home and they fight back all pumped up from their yoga teacher. My yoga teacher told me to fight back against someone, but they don't have any real, then they get really down. And then you don't see them the next day. They're in the hospital. Or the family says, oh, we liked our Susie the way she was. And then she started talking to this yoga teacher, and now Susie's has this attitude just because she has a yoga teacher.
About Masha, for example.
Or Masha, okay? So now Masha's being so like this, and she was nice and quiet before the yoga teacher. What's this yoga teacher doing? This yoga teacher doesn't respect the family. This blah, blah, blah. Okay, and there's a problem. And the family will come to the yoga school and they will complain to the owner, and the yoga teacher will get fired. So instead, the owner says, don't tell students to fight back. That's not peace. Just tell them peace. Just tell them peace. Tell them forgiveness. That's the spiritual way. And then you never get in trouble. Right? It's a way of avoiding trouble. which is, of course, is good in the long run, but is it effective? Is it truly what the other person needs? You know, or is it just something that's sort of safe? You know, it's universal truth to forgive is to open your heart.
Mm-hmm.
But, you know, it's like you have different elements, and if there's fire, you know, sometimes you want to put some water, put the fire out. Other times you want to feed fire, give it some wood.
So different techniques could work with different type of emotions, and you could feel the class what to give them today, right now, and you also have to be flexible to communicate with your owner, for example, right? So it's your personal skill as a yoga teacher, right?
Well, I mean, you know, yoga teacher is not a therapist.
No.
You know, well, yoga therapy is different than teaching yoga asana class. So, you know, this is a subtle thing. Mostly isn't something planned. It more comes from instinct eventually. You know, like, oh, this person's, you know, so sad. You know, let's give them some back bends. Oh, this person's angry. Let's give them some twists. You know, oh, this person is like, you know, but mostly yoga teachers prefer healthy students. And in a way, there's a disclaimer that I, the yoga teacher, have no responsibility for your health. You know, if you walk out the same way you walked in, I did my job. You know, if you walk out of class feeling better, you did your job as a student.
Of course.
You know, because otherwise what happens, if once you start getting into healing, okay, being a healer, you have the responsibility of the healer, and then also you have consequences, right? So you have disappointment, you have people coming with strange diseases, terminal illness, people looking for a miracle.
So if you are a healer, you could accept any student which came to your class, right? How could you see that this person is angry and this has sadness today, or how you could see it?
Well, again, you never know. It comes with experience, is the thing. You know, some things you can write in a book, like if the brow is like this and you have the lines here, you know, they probably have a liver. You have face diagnosis. You know, if their eyes are very deep like this, you know, they may be sad and crying a lot. You know, if the face is red, they may laugh a lot. You know, that's good. You know, you get an instinct, but you know, it depends. You know, it's really different. Yoga therapy is separate from yoga. Yoga therapy has the teacher has more responsibility for diagnosis and treatment. Otherwise, an asana teacher kind of teaches the same thing for everybody, and people will take different things out of the same. Right, so you just teach a good sequence, good music. So it may have some funny part, may have some sad part, may have some angry part, may have some serious part, maybe some boring part. But everyone takes their own, you know, and that's the beauty of it, you know, is that people with many different issues can take the same class, and everyone will get what they came to get out of it, and hopefully a few surprises.
Yeah, maybe from this very point we're going to move to the next question, but before I need to write a couple of words to say about that. So, основной вопрос был по поводу того, что на каждом коврике такой живет целое эго, целый человек, личности. Вот, и каждый приходит с каким-то набором своих вот эмоций сегодняшнего дня, да, и вот есть ли какие-то особые техники, как помочь человеку через них пройти, ну, в классе. Вот, и мы обобщили о том, что все-таки йога-класс – это такая практика общая, И мы развели понятие йога-терапии, понятие вот общего класса, что это несколько разные вещи. И если ты занимаешься с человеком лично, тогда можно находить какие-то решения, опять же, в зависимости от своего личного опыта. Например, Деченом говорит о том, что можно находить связь там с акупунктурой, например, или взять китайскую медицину, провести параллели между меридианами, да, органами и какими-то асанами, направленными на проработку этих зон. Вот. А в то же время, во время общего класса каждый находит что-то свое. Для кого-то класс может пройти довольно скучно, а для кого-то очень интенсивно. Да? И вот прелесть в том, что если класс продуман хорошо, то есть там то каждый выходит с класса с чем-то своим, то есть проживает его по-своему. Это тоже своего рода терапия. And the next question is supposed to be about maybe compassion in this way, because on your last class that I visited, you were talking about compassion. And for example, in Buddhism, there are several techniques about practicing compassion.
Yes.
To increase your level of compassion, let's say maybe Tonglen or Bodhicitta. Do you use it in your personal practice maybe, or actually what practices, maybe Buddhist practices, do you do usually, and do you introduce those things to your yogis?
Yes. I really have my own model of love and compassion, or compassion and love. And this is compassion and love. They are opposite reflexes. Okay, they are opposite reflexes. Compassion and love, like different parts of the brain for love and compassion. Okay, compassion is from science the mirror neurons. Called mirror neurons, like when you feed the baby, then the baby feeds you, right? That's mirroring, right? When I start to cry and you start to cry, even though you don't know why I'm crying, you're mirroring me, right? That's called, because you have your own reasons to cry that you project onto me, or maybe you know why I'm crying and you cry as well to show me that we both feel the pain. Now, humans are primates, and primate brains operate on what are called hierarchies. Okay? And hierarchies have what are called, hiding within love and compassion are hierarchies of submission in the case of love, and dominance in the case of compassion. In compassion, you need a couple things in order to have compassion. Okay. Firstly, you need some suffering. Okay. You cannot have compassion without suffering yourself.
You cannot understand the reason.
Yes, no empathy. Right. Without the empathy and experience of your own suffering. And yes, then you need the awareness of the suffering in the other. Okay, then you need the intention to help, and you need the power. You can't just want to help and not do anything. So sometimes compassion fails because there's a lack of intention. Like we want people to suffer sometimes for different reasons. And sometimes compassion fails because of a lack of power, right? You don't have the power to save the other person. I don't have the knowledge. I don't have the medicine. I don't have in a big scale, I don't have an army to protect this group of people from another army. You know, in the case of an abusive relationship, I don't have the strength to fight the abuser. To protect the person. So in order to strengthen compassion, you have to find where is the gap. Is it a gap in suffering? Because if for example, if I want compassion from you, but you have never had that suffering that I'm having. I'm expecting compassion from you. You can't give it to me because you haven't had the suffering. So is it never expect compassion from someone who has not had the same suffering.
It's useless, right?
Well, no, they may want to have compassion,
But they can't.
but they don't understand. They don't have empathy. They have not had the same suffering. This is why the first noble truth of the Buddha is not simply that life is suffering. Okay. It is that suffering is good because it is a cause of compassion. Right? Now, when we're suffering, it's hard to think, oh, this is good for me. I'm going to be more compassionate. You know, but the most compassionate people are the people who have suffered the most, and it is a paradox, right? Because in trying to avoid suffering, let's say I had a baby or something, and I'm raising a child, and I think, oh, my child will never suffer. And I protect that child completely from any suffering. Then when the child is older, the child won't have very much compassion because the child has nothing to mirror, can't mirror other people's suffering, so has no suffering himself, so assumes other people also don't.
So what do you think about maybe reincarnations? Like if you, for example, was the participant of the World War, the second, yeah?
Yes.
In your previous life, maybe you just can assume and understand now. Maybe you can cause the compassion in you. Yeah?
Well, yes. Well, no. That's a bigger scale, like generations, right? So my parents, my mother left Germany, you know, because of the war, you know, and she was a refugee. And when she was a child, there was no supermarket filled with chocolates and food, you know. And when I was a child, I was not in war. Okay, I was not in war. I was a safe, middle-class place. Now, because my mother lived through the war when she was a child, okay, she used to, you know, hide her chocolate. Okay, mm-hmm. Chocolate always had to be hidden. Okay, and then she would take out the chocolate. She'd unwrap it. She'd take a little bite like this. A little bite. And then she would wrap the chocolate back up as if it had never been touched. And again, hide it. Okay? And, you know, me and my brothers and sisters, it's a whole store filled with chocolate right over there. You know, you don't have to hide it. What are you doing? The war is over, you know, like it's just a story to us, right? That we don't understand, right? However, they talk about trauma through the generations, and it may be genetic, I don't know, but through behavior. Compared to my other friends, right? I had friends whose parents also were not in the war, like my mother was, or they were never refugees. And because I'm imitating my mother so much, right? When I'm at my friend's house and my friend's parent puts the dessert on the plate, you know, a piece of cake or something, you know, I'm eating the cake very slowly. You know, I'm saving the cake, you know, in case I need some later, you know, more than my friends. Not as much as my mother, because I didn't live through the war, but in a way, because part of that childhood imprint is so strong that I lived through her behavior, memories, were normal in my family. To hide the chocolate, to save the chocolate, to, be able to trade the chocolate for something else, compared to children of parents who had not been refugees. So that's very interesting, that compassion suffering can be transferred from generation to generation. Like, I never suffered the refugee experience, but because my mother was a refugee, and she still continued to suffer 30 years, 40 years after that experience, during my childhood, then I connect to refugees very much, because refugees are like my mother. Even though, she's no longer, she has a nice house, she has a husband, she has 4 children, she has lots of clothes, she's very funny, but so compassion can work like that.
And what about the practices, Buddhist practices, like bodhicitta or like Tonglen? They almost looks the same a little bit, yeah? So do you practice them, or what is your personal practice?
Well, yes, I do. My father taught me many things. I was not allowed to feel sorry for myself growing up. I was always encouraged to compare my suffering to people suffering more. And because, yes, all suffering is not equal. Okay, and there's a hierarchy of suffering, right? Some people suffer more, some people suffer less. You can only have compassion for people who are suffering more than you. Okay, it's a hierarchy, which means that compassion, if you become obsessed with it, creates what's called dominance. Compassion, within the reflexes of compassion is dominance. Why? Because if you really have compassion, then you want power. You want power to protect others. You want power to heal the sick. You want power to pay the school teachers. You want power to fight the evil. Okay? And then you start becoming obsessed with power, but in your mind, you're thinking it's because it's compassionate. And this is another one of the paradoxes of compassion, that some of the most cruel people in history and in personal life are motivated by compassion. In fact, people motivated by compassion can be more cruel. I mean, nobody is just cruel because of sadism, that they enjoy, although everyone has some sadistic quality. It's pleasurable to inflict pain upon others to show your power, right? And also, if you love compassion, it is you're addicted to that feeling of healing other people. And it means that without people being sick and hurt, I don't know how to feel happy. Okay? So these are some of the flaws. It's why compassion is then balanced by love. Okay, you have to then sometimes switch off compassion and switch over to love, because love is when the mirror neurons are based on joy. Right? Like, and joy is something that comes naturally, but also joy is learned. How joyful is the home? How do people laugh? How do people cheer each other up? How do people hug? How do people, kiss, of course, make love, all these more adult things too. Love, you can only love someone, just like you can only have compassion who's suffering more than you. You can only love someone who's happier than you. Okay? Now, of course, they may not be happier than you, but then what's important is that I think someone is happier than me on some level. They have more money than me, so I love them, and I give them money.
So this is your practice, to give money to the people?
No, I do some charity. I've done some charity. Usually, sure, I would like to make sure, and I try to help people in the right moment if I feel it's going to be effective, But you notice that people would rather give their money to someone who has a lot of money already than give money to someone who's lower than them. Okay.
Maybe we could do a kids charity somewhere deep in Russia, and to make a Kill Bill party. Also.
Like fundraising Kill Bill party.
Yeah. Or maybe yogi party. Like.
Yeah, I mean, well, see, love and compassion,
area.
they're always changing. Everyone is always changing, and whether people are happy or suffering is always changing. It's why it's nonverbal reflex. It's instinct, right? But it's also learned behavior. So I may, in my family, when someone's crying, we, tell them to think of somebody we kind of guilt trip them and say, oh, why are you crying? You have a nice house, you are pretty, you shouldn't be crying. Look at somebody over there, they're sick, they're the ones you should be crying about, right? Whereas in another household, when someone was crying, they may say, oh, you're crying, I'm so sorry, it's wrong. Those are different responses. So compassion is also based on what we want to give. Right? Have you ever had like a problem and you knew someone else could help you with it, right? And instead, and would take them only this much energy for them to give it to you, okay? But instead, they give you this much of something that doesn't actually help your suffering. Because that's what they are used to giving, right? That's what feels good for them, feels compassionate for them to give, right? Rather than what actually would. So there's compassion based on what people feel comfortable giving or feel, socially acceptable to give, as opposed to compassion that's really based on what the suffering person needs. And this is another difference between compassion and love. The compassion is based on what people need and thinking about what people need, and love is based on what people want, right? What people want, not what people need.
What is the more important?
Good question. Well, it's constantly changing. But here's another wrinkle in the formula, okay, is that love, a little bit of love, even just a little bit of love, it oftentimes makes us forget our suffering, right? And for example, sometimes the child is crying, is sick, oh, my stomach, oh. And some parents, say, okay, have some more chocolate cake. Right, but obviously more chocolate cake, although it might taste good for us to distract them, they're going to have more stomachache, right? But at least they feel happy for a second, right? To try to distract. So the love, in a way, distracts from suffering, but doesn't go to the cause of the suffering. Okay, to give someone what they want. Like when I was a little boy, my parents would like to take me to Zen centers and places that were very boring for children. They're a little better now, so they sometimes have a playground now, or they have a child room or something. But in the 70s, Zen center, the parents drive to the Zen center to meditate and leave the children in the parking lot. Wait. And of course, we'd run around, make noise, play games in the parking lot. And then the monks would come out and say, you should be quiet, the people are meditating. And then we would say, you're not meditating very good if some children playing is bothering you. And then my parents would come out and they would be very embarrassed. But so my parents would say, oh, I would try different ways to get out of going to the monastery. Okay, or I would try to I go, oh, I'm too sick to go to the monastery. Oh, I'm feeling sick. Oh, I'm too sick to go to the monastery. Oh. And then my parents said, oh, you're too sick to go to the monastery. Oh, well, that's too bad. It's too bad because we were going to go to the mall and the toy store on the way back from the monastery. And so, actually, I'm okay. Oh, now I'm okay. I can go to the monastery. So rather than say, oh no, you should like the monastery. Monastery is not so bad. Don't feel like monastery is bad. They knew that wasn't going to work, right? I would get more sick. But instead, they try to give me what I want, try to give me some love rather than compassion. So people get confused, or they use the distracting quality of love to distract from compassion. Then there's a cycle where the suffering will get bigger and bigger, and then eventually you resent the distraction. And the distraction is no longer pleasurable. Mm-hmm. There's a difference between canceling pain and achieving pleasure. All right, and that's another distinction between the part of the brain that focuses on compassion and the part of the brain that focuses on love. Right? There's a difference between that really compassion is sort of the problem-solving brain, right? And love is the opportunity-seeking brain. Right? Those are different things. So, and by the time we're an adult, everyone has their what are called baselines set. Some people just prefer to seek out opportunities. Other people prefer to solve problems. Mm-hmm. You know? Everyone has some of both. I don't think anybody is stuck in one or the other. And it all comes down to what was rewarded in youth. Were you praised for solving problems and helping people with suffering? Or were you praised for loving yourself and finding opportunities to make joy?
So in this case, what do you think about bodhicitta?
Bodhicitta. Well, bodhicitta is good.
It's mostly about you take something bad and you give something good, in exchange. And the thing that you achieve should dissolve your ego, let's say.
Well, I don't know about dissolve ego. You have to take care of the ego first. You have to have a good, healthy ego, and then you can dissolve it. Mm-hmm. So in my case, I felt that my father was trying to dissolve my ego because he didn't have a chance to dissolve his ego when he was younger, and so he'll never get there because he was started older. But there's a flaw in that thinking. Is that the child doesn't have the context, doesn't understand, it comes across as just being punished for no reason. Okay, and then being told, well, this is going to make you more compassionate. But it's like, it doesn't make any sense. Okay, so this is why every parent is trying to do the opposite of the previous parent. I had too much of this, so I'm not going to give you very much of that. But then the next generation says, I didn't get very much of this, so I'm going to give my children all of it, more of it. Then that generation says, oh, they gave me so much of this. I'm not going to give you too much because I didn't like getting too much when I was young. And that's why it actually goes zigzag. The grandparents are very important. Right? You can't go, the trait keeps reversing, like DNA, helix. Mm-hmm. You can't go 2 generations the same way, right? It always comes back. So grandparents are very important people. Okay, parents are going crazy. It's very hard being a parent. You have all the responsibility in society of these crazy little children running around. But you have no power over them at all. Just an illusion of power at the beginning that falls apart when the child gets older. But the grandparent, has one step, has already made the mistakes and has compassion for the mistakes, you know, and can kind of absorb some of the communication. You know, so I never knew my grandparents, but I deeply miss them. In particular, my father's mother, okay, Betsy, and my mother's father, Carl. I actually feel are more my role models, even though I never met them, than my parents are. So I was looking for pictures and looking to hear stories, and I'm attracted to people who are like I imagine certain people who are like my grandparents, and I want to be like my grandparents.
So do you like old people?
Sure. I mean, yeah. I think it's one of the keys to long life is to love old people, you know. And in John Robbins' book, Healthy at 100, he talks about what are the factors of getting older, biological aging. And you've probably seen many videos where they talk about human connection, and relationships are one of the main factors in determining long life. But of course, diet and smoking and exercise are all there. But another very powerful one is it's more complicated to describe, and it's interesting that in health magazines that like to talk about human connection, they skip over this one. But basically, if you have a negative image of old people and aging, if you're afraid of getting older, if you think that getting older means you lose your opportunity, you lose your vitality, you lose your sexuality, you lose your social value, you lose your quality of senses. If you're afraid, and you're so afraid you don't even want to see an old people, right? You avoid old people, then you get older faster.
Okay, I see. I think Elena would be a really beautiful old woman one day.
Yes.
We'll see.
Let's see.
We'll see.
But, it's good. So very good to, and you know, like there's great programs, you know, in some of the smarter, wiser countries where they have homelessness and they have neglected old people. Right? They have the college students who can't afford rent, and you have lonely old people, right? And so they put them together. You know, they made the college students be roommates with the lonely old people. And so the college students, they have some support more in the society.
Yeah, I've heard about that.
And the old people have some companionship. And actually, it's very good for, you know, again, maybe, you know, unfortunately, putting the old people in some separate place where we never see them again is terrible. They get exploited. And so that is, you know, very important too. You know, and if you don't have grandparents, then, you know, try to adopt some old people, or pay attention to old people, do some service, do some reading for the old, you know, things like that. Those are good.
Is it also your daily practice? To take old people to your house?
No, you know, it's hard. These are all ideals. You know, I'm just a guy working, you know, I'm traveling a lot. But of course, yes, as a yoga teacher, I mean, yoga is a lot of old people coming as students. You know, I've had many massage clients. You know, I'm also a massage practitioner who are very old, much older than me. And I give touch, you know, I give touch to massage very old people, you know, and they receive touch from a younger person. It's very powerful for them, you know, and I touch them. You know, I don't see an old person so much. You know, when you're giving massage, the lights are kind of low. They're lying down, you know. No, sometimes there might be a smell, but young people smell too, you know. There might be some wrinkle or something, you know, but young people are also not perfect necessarily. And when you see the person, and when they're very relaxed and they've received a massage, they've been touched by someone younger than them, they remember a little bit. And the younger person inside them, you can see. Right? When you really hang out with an older person and you don't see the outside part, that is one of the spiritual experiences. That's why yoga is so popular, because it does make you feel younger, and you never give up on trying to do the asanas, even if you're old. You never, that helps you, enjoy life.
Oh, actually, from this very point, maybe I can go to the next question.
Right. Right. Yeah, but just let's translate.
Предыдущий вопрос, теперь очень сложно хронологически восстановить цепочку событий, поэтому очень кратко срезюмируем. Вопрос был о том, практикует ли Дечен бодхичитту или другие виды.
Я, честно говоря, ничего не поняла. Так что переведи, пожалуйста.
В общем, речь шла о практике сострадания. Да, то есть используются ли они вообще, так как есть опыт, опять же, в буддизме, да, используются ли эти практики на классах, например, интегрируются ли они или есть ли они в личной практике. Но здесь вопрос как бы был разведен немножко по-другому. И вот на две чаши весов Дечен поставил сострадание и любовь, как ни странно, да. И для сострадания, для того, чтобы сострадать, нужно страдать больше, чем тот человек, которому ты сострадаешь. Такая интересная мысль была выражена. И что порой для того, чтобы человеку помочь, может быть, стоит каплю любви туда добавить, а не сколько культивировать сострадание в себе. И что иногда люди увлекаются, то есть становятся addicted to compassion, да, то есть именно такими зависимыми от этого чувства сострадания. И теряется причинно-следственная связь, да. И порой можно культивировать в себе обратное состояние, да, именно чувство любви. Дечен говорит, что нам порой любить проще тех, кто живет лучше нас, да, нам проще любить. И поэтому, может быть, немножко поменять эти практики местами, посмотреть на все это под другим углом, в привычном ключе, которым мы, наверное, предполагали услышать ответ на этот вопрос.
Что же он все-таки практикует?
I have a test too. I have a test that I share to see whether the person is a love person or a compassion person, by whatever age in life the person is. Do they have a preference instinct by reflex for compassion or love?
So what's the test?
And everyone has both, but everyone also has a preference. Okay. Would you like to try the test?
Yeah, maybe let's Lena finish translation.
Oh, she always finished? I'm sorry, I thought you were done. I thought you wrapped it up.
It was a big part of discussions. Just be careful with candles.
No.
No. We could have a really great.
Собственно, как раз мы к этому подошли.
Да.
Так что логично.
Да?
Да, конечно.
Let's continue the text. With test.
Okay. This test, you can make a variation of it, but all right. It's a modern test, like scenario. Okay. Let's say that you have two college roommates, okay, that are your best friends. Okay, you love them both. Okay, you care about them both. You lived, 2 years together in college. It's 10 years later. Okay, and now you're sitting there and you get two text messages at the exact same time come into your phone. Okay, one friend says, "Hey, I'm getting engaged to be married. Can you have coffee with me in half an hour so we can plan the wedding? The other text.
Gotcha.
Oh no, I'm finally getting divorced. Can you meet with me in half an hour? We have tea and you help me find a divorce lawyer. Who do you call back first?
I think I would ask them to come to the same
you have to
time
call
at the
one.
same time.
Okay.
Which is suffering right now.
That's a okay. All right. Okay.
Okay. Anyway.
Oh, same time.
Share the same thing. You know?
Okay. So you try to bring.
Or maybe it depends on.
Who do you know? But you can only call back. Who do you call back first?
Me?
Yeah.
To tell the truth, maybe the second one first.
Who you call the divorced friend first?
Maybe, yeah.
Okay, so you're a compassion person.
I see.
You prefer You prefer to soothe the poor person who had a divorce.
Maybe you know what I would
you're
do?
kind of joyless.
I would call him, say, don't be too frustrated.
Right, but I'm saying you would do compassion first. You like compassion more than love.
That would be my natural reaction.
That's okay. That's okay.
But anyway, then I would ask him to join us.
Okay, but it's too late.
Okay.
Too late. You ignored. You ignored your happy friend.
You forget that you are in Russia.
You ignored your happy friend.
Would like to suffer here.
You ignored your happy friend. Well, some people say no. I would call my friend who's happy first. Some people say. They say no. I would call my happy friend first. And then I would call my sad friend. I would want to celebrate first. Some people. And those are love people, right? They want to be part of the love first, and then of course you bring them together. But then still, another way to ask the question is, okay, you're sitting at a table with two people. One of them just got divorced. One of them is about to get married. Do you start talking to the person about to get married about how great it is in the wedding, and knowing it's going to make the person who's getting divorced feel more sad?
It's not supposed to make him sad.
No, but it doesn't matter. It does.
The
joy causes suffering. The fact that your friend is celebrating the marriage is making the divorced person more upset.
It depends on the person.
Or do you take care of the divorced person and go, oh yeah, I'm so. And then you're ruining the joy of the person who you can only do one at a time. You can't do both. What my point is you can't do both at the same time. Just like you can't breathe in and breathe out at the same time, right? You can't practice love and compassion at the same time, okay? I mean, there's many different levels, and eventually it gets very kaleidoscopic. But basically, you have to choose. It also depends on you, right? It depends on your feeling, right? If you're not feeling good, you probably want to celebrate to make yourself feel better. You would be more attracted to the person who's happy. If you yourself are kind of sad, then you would, want to go with the person who's happy so you would feel better. If you're feeling really happy, you have all this extra energy, then you're happy, that person's happy, so then you would have extra energy to take care of. You would not be worried about losing the joy because you're already joyful to the person who's sad. But you have to have a choice, and every choice is a consequence. Right? There is no perfect answer. You were trying to give a perfect answer, and some people do. They try to they try to outsmart the question. Oh, well, I would do both. I would send them back a text message at the same time. Even the way I ask the question reveals my bias, right? Because when I say the two text messages come in at the same time, I still have to describe one of them first. And the other one first. That shows my priority, or tips the hand, right?
So you would call the first one?
I don't know.
It's also depends on.
I'm not a compassion person. I don't know. I would definitely take care of the unhappy person.
That's why you are a hiller. Probably.
Well, sometimes, and other times I'm, an actor. So, but yes, and so people who are compassion people, they have to work on loving a little bit. They have to work on joy a little bit. They need more practice. They need more exposure to happy people. They need to purposefully not go to the funeral home, but go to the wedding, right? That's what's going to balance them. You know, every time they go into compassion, they're going farther into their habits. It's a habit as much as an instinct. And people who are love people, enjoy people, you know, it's harder for them. They'd rather go celebrate the wedding, you know, than deal with the divorced person. You know, it's just not their thing, you know. But again, it balances out because obviously joy does cancel compassion too, right? Joy also cancels. That's why people, you know, the problem is that love is so, to get just a little bit of love sometimes, people have to go through a huge amount of suffering, right? They think to get a little bit of love. There's a little bit of...
We are saying that, okay, you're right, it's right, it's out of energy. Sometimes you need to encourage, but to encourage you need to have this...
Well, they're just different, and as much as they are theoretically equal, they're different chemicals in the brain. Okay, when you get to brain chemistry, and they do relate to dominance and submission, right? If I love you, okay, it's because I feel happier when I think about you than when I don't, right? And then I feel even happier when you're here in the room with me than when you're not, right? And then if I can touch you, or it goes on and on like tantric,
I'm getting more happy and happy each second.
Well, yeah, and when love is mirroring, it gets higher and higher like that, right? But the problem is that then the thing is though, and now the problem is I have now tasted this happiness, right? Which means if you're not there, I feel, whereas before I was fine, but now when you're not there, instead of feeling fine, I'm feeling that she's not here, right? So that means that now I'm submissive. Means I need her. Right? I'm not all independent. My happiness is not all me. Right? I'm submissive. Okay, I'm in the weaker position, being in love. Right? And that's why some people don't fall in love, because they don't want to be in the weaker position. Right? It's because maybe in society it's too cruel. If you show weakness, they get punished more. You know, things like that. It does make it hard to love, because people who are so powerful in their role in society, it's very hard for them to find love because there's nobody superior to them. You know, like in power relationships. You know, like the boss or something. Right? He's starved for love. The people at the very top of any hierarchy, even when people act loving towards them, they question it. Are they trying to get something from me? Or because everyone else is loving them, they can't love anybody. Right? If everyone's loving you, you can't love anyone because there's no one higher than you. So then they go, oh, well, I love God. Some people, they stress all of it that way. Going up to God, that might help. But that's why to be happy, you have to be able to change positions. No one wants to be at the top of a hierarchy or the bottom. Everyone sort of wants to be a little bit in the middle so that they have somewhere up to go, but there's always somebody below too that you can be compassionate to. And there's some people above you can love. And then you can receive love from people below you. Right, and you can receive compassion. The other problem with people at the top of the hierarchy is no one has any compassion for them. So if you need compassion and people give you love, people are not mirroring your suffering, right? Because people think she's the boss. She doesn't suffer. She dishes out suffering. You know, like he doesn't suffer, or because she's the boss. You know, and also I have no power. I'm down here, they're up there. What can I do for their suffering? What can I do for the problems of big, powerful people? I can't. I can just love them. That's all I can do is love them. And in a way, you can't really love someone who's suffering more than you. But you can have compassion. Now, the same action can be interpreted as love or as compassion. And this is where sometimes you get conflict. Like if you love someone, someone wants an equal relationship, but there's a difference in power or whatever, then no one wants, we fall in love, right? We don't fall in compassion. Right? We stand for compassion, but we fall in love. So it's very common sense. And the whole point though is always switching. Just like we breathe in and out, I switch from loving myself, taking in breath, but then if I keep loving myself and there's no limit to it, it hurts me, it breaks out my lung. Then I breathe out to have compassion for myself. Right? I do what I have to do, but at a certain point, you can't breathe out any farther. Right? You can't have any more, you have to switch to love. And so we're constantly, by breathing and the beating of the heart, we're constantly switching between compassion and love every day. Every time we take a breath, we're adjusting it, getting closer and closer, more and more refined, more and more subtle with our love and compassion. So when I teach vinyasa and the bandhas, okay, I'm having people, strengthen their Uddiyana Bandha for their self-love, and then on the inhale, and then strengthen their Mula Bandha on the exhale for their self-compassion. And for me, really, yoga is the cultivation of the self-love and self-compassion, and how to switch back and forth more than the morality of loving others or having compassion for others. Okay, the yoga teacher can't really be in charge of, can't help anyone be compassionate to others, and can't really help anyone love others through yoga. Okay, that's more leadership and manipulation. But a yoga teacher should help people love themselves and have compassion for themselves. That's what we work on in the classroom. Okay, but it's I'm not trying to knock teachers that tell you to save the whales or to be nice to your parents or to forgive the cruelty of the world. They have a good purpose. But I feel technically, in terms of what I like to work on, what I feel is safe for me to work on, what is appropriate boundaries, what is safe space, and what is trauma-sensitive yoga, is I'm encouraging people to self-love or self-compassion, because everybody needs work on it, one of them or the other. Right? Everybody needs work on one or the other. And in terms of outer relationships, I have to do that myself. I have to, work on my own loving other people and my own compassion for other people. I can't, as a yoga teacher, tell other people about that, because I have to work on that myself. I'm a human being myself. So that's how.
Да, в общем, мы такой вот простой тест сделали, да, что больше в человеке присутствует, либо тенденция к состраданию, либо к выражению радости и любви. Ну и вот пример был такой, что если тебе вдруг позвонит, есть два друга, и вот они одновременно прислали смс-ку. Один написал о том, что у него радостное событие, он помолвлен и вот скоро женится, а второй написал в это же время, что он разводится, в общем, все плохо, кому бы вы позвонили первому. Ну и, соответственно, если позвонили тому, кто разводится, значит, сострадание превалирует чувство. А если бы хотели именно разделить радость, да, человек, мы позвонили первому. Но я думаю, что большинство наших слушателей, я предполагаю, позвонило бы все-таки посострадать кому-нибудь, да. Вот. И что касается вот практики йоги, интересно отметил мысль, опять же, Дечена о том, что как преподаватель он не научает людей говорить, да, то есть развивать сострадание к тем людям, другим, или развивать любовь к кому-то. То, что человек действительно может сделать через свою практику, это развить сострадание к себе, и после этого развить любовь к себе же опять. И тем самым уже через вот свою жизнь исцелять жизнь других.
Хорошо. Ну что, последний вопрос, да?
And so, in one of your interviews, you are talking about the inspiration that you have on your classes, when you can, through the work and the class, encourage people not to, give up with the cycles of reincarnations, but mostly to live up their own dreams, to realize their dreams and to make their life happier, maybe to fulfill their dreams and encourage people. So is it now still actual? And maybe from this very question we can move to Graha Yoga. Maybe there is some special message in this course, what you want to transmit to people through this.
Well, Graha Yoga, just like we had to build love and compassion, or you ask for compassion, I had to bring in love, right? And then have love and compassion, had to have dominance and submission, and then you have to have self and other, and then you have giving and receiving, conscious, subconscious. Mm-hmm. But yes, I mean, obviously, I'm not a death. The problem with reincarnation is there's a couple problems. It's cool. I mean, there's some evidence for reincarnation, and not to get into the debate whether it's real or true or not. But there's two main problems with reincarnation that have to be framed, keep in context. Okay, one is that you have two children or one? You have a baby.
Yeah.
Okay, right. When your baby was born, she was perfect, right?
Yes, she is perfect.
Yes.
Also.
She did not. She was not born guilty of the crime. No. Right. But according to reincarnation, she was a terrible something.
Maybe.
And she has past karma that is so bad, right? So
old killer, for example.
Right. Or something like that. So a little bit, the reincarnation comes from cultures that did not have much understanding of childhood trauma. Okay, that the unresolved emotions of the parents create psychological issues in children. Okay, and also cultures that have what are a very high respect for parents or filial piety, meaning you don't want to blame your parents for your psychology, even though parents do create fuck up their children. Okay. Now, so that's one thing, is that to say it's a past life is to blame the child for something that the parents should take responsibility for. Okay. So that's the one problem number one with just practically. I'm not saying whether it's right or wrong in reincarnation, but how it is used. Okay. It can be used to blame the victim. Well, you must have been bad in a past life. As opposed to, we're sorry we didn't make a perfect house for you. We did our best. Okay, we did our best, but it wasn't perfect. There were a lot of things going on. People were fighting. People were, your parents were human. Your parents weren't God. Your parents were human. They were still working through their own stuff, and they had to work through their own stuff while you were a baby, and you picked up those impressions. Instead, they just say, past life, you were something, which you can't really prove or disprove or do anything about. So that's a problem. The problem two of reincarnation comes on the other side of the future life. Okay, someone's saying, forget about what you want, getting what you want in this life. Desire is suffering, and just, be nice to people and you'll get it in your next life. If you're nice to people, you'll get everything you want in your next life. I promise. Okay? But they can't be proven. Can't be, it's called a deferment or delay, or stalling or avoiding. Okay? Saying, instead of saying, you know what, it's inconvenient for me to help you with your desire, because I have my own desire, and because you're desiring things or means that I have to help you if I love you, And that also means that society might have to change. Like I thought that our family just take care of itself, but actually for you to have what you want, actually it has effects throughout all of society. And so we have to actually fight against, we have to be part of the society and fight for what you want. Instead of say, oh, you know what, your desires are all selfish, and if you just serve other people and have compassion, then in your next life you'll have all your desires like that without even trying. You know, so that's the problem number 2 of how compassion gets reincarnation gets abused. Okay. Now it's not the end of the world, and I'm not saying throw reincarnation away, but a modern Buddhist, a modern yogi has to be aware of those what are called spiritual bypass. Okay, spiritual bypass. But I still like reincarnation. I also like heaven and hell, but reincarnation and heaven and hell can go together, because hell is not a permanent state, a permanent residence. You know, neither is heaven. You know, so that would be my answers about bodhicitta and reincarnation.
And then, do you integrate it in your these ideas into your Graha method?
Well, Graha yoga tries to be as scientific as possible. Graha yoga, Graha means gravity, means to hold, means the yoga of connection. Okay, the yoga of connection, meaning it's what we work with. It's an embodying yoga rather than a dissociating yoga. Okay. And the basis of Graha yoga is that the most simple organism, the single cell organism, doesn't have smell, taste, sight, hearing, and touch. Right? It doesn't have such sophisticated senses as the higher organisms. So what does it have? It's like floating around this single cell. Well, it has mass. Right, so it kind of knows which way is up and down, and kind of knows what's bigger and what's smaller. I mean, it eats what's smaller and eats away from what's bigger, not be eaten. And it kind of has a sense of energy. So it has a sense of matter, right? It has a sense of energy, hot and cold, movement. Okay, and then as the more complex organisms, 2, 4, so on grow. Like you say, a human starts out though as a single cell and becomes me, and starts to build these other senses for the organs. Okay, the stomach is for the smell, for the taste, all the organs. And the intestines is for the smell. Stomach is the tongue, right? The liver is the eye, and the kidney is the ear, and the heart is the skin. And then as the organisms, we have to survive by reflex, right? I have to act like my smell is real, right? But my smell is actually constructed from multiple things.
It's like prevents you from eating something bad.
Yeah, it's good. Or even going towards where maybe there's an allergen or poison. Yeah, avoid going into a poison place. But also smelling fear, smelling desire. Also to find the food. I mean, there's no food that I can see, but I can smell and find it. So it's positive. It's opportunity seeking as well as danger avoiding. Okay, so it's loving by smelling. But also,
so you always have this paradigm, like compassion, love, avoiding, or
yes. Well, you can. It's a lens. Yeah, and so Graha yoga works with Buddhism. It's a child of Jivamukti, a little bit. It's a child of Oha Shiatsu, Shiatsu school. So it's my combination of forms. Okay, But what happens is that so then a part of our brain forgets about gravity, right? We used to take gravity for granted, and it forgets about electricity, and focuses on smell and taste and the other three. Mm-hmm. But when I pick an apple, it doesn't matter mass and electricity. Those become, even though those are more concrete, they become abstract to our consciousness. Mm-hmm. You understand? Yeah. And then when we do yoga exercise, and you do the bandhas and the breathing and maybe meditation, things like that, what happens is that the constructed senses, the basis of the constructed senses starts to become what we concentrate on. You concentrate on the basis of the senses rather than on the content of the senses. Okay? You clarify the form of the senses rather than looking at what's in the content of the senses. You have a distinction between the content and the form. Mm-hmm. And you, in theory, get to this direct experience of the gravity sense and the direct experience of the electrical sense. And the people who are doing more like floating asana, looks like it's floating, things like that, that's because they're taking their mind away from smell and taste and sight and hearing. And although hearing is the closest to those other senses, it sort of sounds like we interpret it through sound, the Nada yoga, mm-hmm. Okay, the field of Nada yoga. So that's kind of the boring side of Graha yoga. But then Graha yoga also works with the irrational, mm-hmm. right, and the subconscious, the irrational, what the non-verbal motivations. Well, the hierarchy of love and compassion. Mm-hmm. Why am I happier giving money to somebody who doesn't need it, right, than I am to give money to somebody who needs it?
Is it in the form of action? So?
Well, it just means that people, because love is a little, we do want love more than we want compassion. Right? We want love because it feels better, if we don't want to be dominant, we want other people to take care of. We have a lot of, by loving, it also because it feels nice to have a dominant person. That means that they're going to protect me, they're going to take care of stuff, and I can just enjoy it. If I have to give compassion, it means I have to be in charge, I have to be responsible, I have to be aware of suffering. So we prefer to be loving, we prefer love to joy. Love is a little bit trumps compassion, right, in biology. Right? However, spirituality and morality sort of reverses it and tries to say that compassion trumps love, right? That compassion is better than love. It's better to have compassion and go feed the sick than it is to go gambling with rich people. And make more money with them, right? That you're going to go to heaven. That all the spiritual texts, they say, but now the spiritual texts, though, they have a political agenda.
Spiritual texts have political agenda.
Yeah, and that's why the spiritual texts say we should be compassionate. Mm-hmm. Because in the old days, education was only religious. There was no education without religion. And then the institutions of education were supported by the aristocracy, mm-hmm. so the dominant people. Right? However, once you're educated, you don't really see why the aristocracy should be in charge, right? Because you see them they didn't earn it, okay? And all the things that you're reading on, you should earn your thing, and they're not doing that. So let's get them. Let's have a revolution and get them, okay? So it's a problem to educate people. The aristocracy doesn't want the people to be educated, particularly, okay? Although the aristocrats, they do like the poor people being doctors and dentists and more skilled servants. You can't just have dumb uneducated servants, then you have to do more work yourself. So if the exchange in the religion, monastic religion, is to grant education to the poor people for free, you have to put some brainwashing in there that the only books that they can read are books that say reinforce the status quo, don't have any desire, desire is the cause of suffering, the God is, love God, meaning love the aristocracy because they're closer to God, accept your place, don't have desires, and that's to check the revolutionary. That's what, because secular education, causes 1960s. In the United States, we had the New Deal, and people were given, education budgets were increased, and the arts budgets were increased, and people were able to express themselves more, and people were able to protest against the wars and things like that, and in really graphic ways, and use cameras and to use the technology to expose the corruption. Right? So then it had to be. If it's religious, you don't have this problem. So it's not to be cynical about Buddhism and monasticism, because there's something very good about monastic life. Not everybody wants to be in the rat race, and it's great that there's a place people can just contemplate Dharma and. But in a way, there's a political agenda of all of this monastic literature. As we talked about also, and we talked about last interview about the psychological problems of reading monastic literature if you're not a monk, right? Because in a way, the monk literature is trying to tell you to invalidate your desires. Right? But if your desires are invalidated, your reflexes in society are not as good, because you're spending some energy trying to get away from your desires. Then that's energy that's not moving towards getting your desires. So you wind up with half of both, which is nothing, as opposed to all of one or all of the other. So, I wasn't trying to knock people for reading those books, but there are some people who don't benefit from reading those books, because those are people there's one category of people who are afraid to go get their desire. Right? And then when they find something that tells them, oh, it's good to be afraid of desire because desire is bad, they'll really cling to that. But meanwhile, they haven't really gotten rid of the desire. But they're really intensifying avoiding it by getting a false reward for avoiding it. Saying, oh, you're holy. You're holy for being a coward. You're holy for letting other people walk over you. You're holy for being, burying your jealousy so deep that nobody can see it. That's my personal position. Maybe other people have a different experience of it, there was a generation that they really thought it was their big achievement to go but it's a little bit of a what's called it's a bit of a privilege. There's a lot of social issues and privilege issues.
So, like the main idea that is, sometimes in those texts there are the idea of cultivating of such features as patience, of maybe not fulfillment of something, just being calm, because it's more convenient for the politics to rule persons who are afraid even of being expressed in the world. Yes, and so the main thing in terms of Graha yoga, maybe let's say, to make vice versa. Yes, to encourage people to be, to be free or to be able to fulfill your dreams, and maybe on the basics of some Buddhist or Indian good ideas.
Well, yeah, because every desire leads to another desire, and that's what they call samsara. They try to act like that's a bad thing. Why is it bad? Right? Because eventually you'll find a desire you can't have. Okay, well, so does everybody. Right? Desires they can't. Everybody, no matter high or low, wants something they can't have. Okay.
Maybe to help people to find the true desire.
But yes, it gets refined. Like I want this. But once you want something, you don't know the motivation of it until you have it. If you never get it, then you never really learn A, what it's like to have it and be satisfied and be happy, And B, sometimes you get something you thought you wanted, but you're still unsatisfied, right? Because you wanted some other feeling. You thought the thing would change your feelings, but it didn't, right? Because the feelings were being projected onto the thing. But you don't know until you have it. For example, only rich people know what money can't buy. Right? As long as I don't have a lot of money, I might think to myself, well, if I had a lot of money, then I wouldn't feel this way, or I wouldn't have this problem. Whereas a rich person knows, well, I have the money, but and it's true that I don't have some of these problems because I have money. But actually, there's a whole bunch of problems that I still have. I still feel the same way. And it's why rich people, they resent.
And plus some more problems, like to feed cars, to feed
expectations, houses, right? Expectations.
To feed people.
Yeah, responsibility.
To take care of.
Responsibility, expectations, right? It's what's called the, to get off of the money question, so I'm not sitting down getting mad at rich people and sanctifying poor people. It's not true. But it is true, though, that rich people have less compassion. Sorry. Because they are more protected. And so they suffer less. And so they have less causes for compassion. Now, they still have some suffering, but they tend to have compassion for people like themselves. Okay, more than they have compassion for people who are not like themselves. That's another problem with compassion, is that we are more compassionate towards people like ourselves. We're less compassionate for people not like ourselves, only because of the mirror. We see less less mirroring. In nature, you don't survive necessarily by having compassion for everything. You survive by having compassion for your tribe and your family and your species. You don't necessarily survive by having compassion for someone trying to eat you. Not the right time for have compassion. And if you have to eat someone else, it's not necessarily good to have compassion for someone you have to eat to survive. Right? It will disrupt your instincts, disrupt your self-love. So sometimes self-love does come at expense of compassion for others, which is why people going, love is all you need, love, 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 they're causing problems.
So the main thing is through the content of your practices, you want to encourage people to be free to express themselves.
Yeah, and to recognize the limits, and to know and to be comfortable with the switching and the combinations, and to to get to the cause of their desires, to the cause of their compassion.
And maybe to find out what is real desire.
Get the value of suffering.
Artificial one.
Yeah, take advantage of suffering. Right? It's inconvenient. I don't always want to learn a lesson. Sometimes I just want what I want. But now I know, when I'm suffering is the only time I can increase my compassion. Okay. The problem with a lot of the new age yogas and hippie yogas, is that they are selling suffering-free compassion. right? Some of them define compassion as a state of non-suffering, or they define the goal of compassion as the end of all suffering. Ever heard that before? Like, I'm enlightened and I'm going to end all suffering. That's our goal. We're going to end all suffering. And that, you don't want to take away someone's idealism, and it's great. But the problem is, without suffering, you don't have any compassion. You need suffering. That's the noble truth of the Buddha, is that the more suffering, the more compassionate. The less suffering, therefore, the less suffering, the less compassion. Now, maybe, to me, the real spiritual threshold, okay, is not to supersize compassion, okay, supersize love. Okay, I have compassion for all beings. That's a power trip. That means you're at the top. That means you have the power to save everybody and the awareness of everybody's suffering. Okay. It's a little bit of a power trip that only a monk is supposed to be given, because they're reading a book. And so they have paid in advance, the monk or the nun, that they've given up all their rights to property and to even basic survival behaviors, such as self-defense, procreation. They've given all that up in order to concentrate on compassion. That's an amazing contribution. Because to cause less suffering, right? To say that I have compassion for all beings over and over again, okay, is a little bit ignoring that is pretending I'm not causing any suffering. And everyone is causing suffering to someone, at least. Even if it's by being happy, causes people who are unhappy to suffer more by comparison. Right? When you're feeling down and someone over there is celebrating instead of being compassionate for you, does their celebration make you feel better or worse?
But anyway, sometimes you need to find space for yourself and not to be dependent on the surrounding. To be alone, to go to the park, and if you have the feeling of yourself, you can find out what makes you suffer or what makes you happier, and to be dependent on this.
Well, but that's the point. That's where I disagree, because I don't believe there is no independence. We are interdependent, as Ethan Nichtern describes. We're interdependent. And this whole idea of enlightenment as a state of happiness that never goes away because it's independent of the outer, that ignores all of our reflexes and the causes of happiness in the brain. The brain feels happy when we're doing something better. We're getting something, we're getting respect, we're getting affection, we're getting a new idea, inspiration, or whatever the other one is, we're avoiding pain, right? And those are the four chemicals: serotonin, oxytocin, dopamine, and endorphin. Okay, the four happiness-causing chemicals. Right? Those are completely intermixed with our social position and our natural state.
Yeah, I agree.
So therefore, the idea that, again, it goes back to someone reading a monk book, so that they're not competing for the rest of the things that there are that collectively in society can provide each individual, taking themselves out of the running. What they get infinite compassion. They are qualified because they are morally superior. A monk is morally superior to an ordinary person because they paid in advance. So someone who reads that, who is not a monk, and who says that over and over again, it's a very popular mantra with the hippies and the New Age people. I have compassion for all beings. They say over and over. And they think they're doing something good for other people or themselves. I don't think so. I think you have to have compassion for who you have the power to hurt and not hurt them. Right? You have compassion for people who you have the power to take their suffering away, solve their problems, and help them. You can't have compassion for somebody who's happier than you. There's a lot of people who don't need your compassion. They laugh at you for saying you have compassion. They're like, what do you think? You're crazy. Just say, what do you? I don't need your compassion. You need my compassion. It's also a way of not needing anything, pretending to not need something. Control freaks. Control freaks love. I have compassion for all beings. They're trying to pretend they don't need compassion themselves.
It's like frustration.
They're trying to,
It's probably a normal thing for Americans. Not right.
Well, I don't want to be, believe me, trying to take away the I have compassion for all beings from someone who's been chanting that, they freak out. They go, oh my God, you're so bad. You're so cynical. They get so mad. Like you take a heroin away from a heroin addict or something like that. Like they go absolutely nuts. To be like, what do you mean I'm causing suffering? I say the mantra all the time. They don't want to, recognize the flaw in the model. Okay, the fly in the ointment, which is that I want to suffer in order to have compassion. I would never want to not suffer if not suffering meant that I would lose my compassion. And people do lose compassion. This is the other thing in terms of the memory and the self-image, because people change social positions, right? So someone who was poor who becomes rich, okay? They hate it when you tell them that they never want to admit that they're rich. Right? They never want, and they become in fact, they're double like, when I was poor, I never did ask for anything. So why are you asking me? Right? That's because in their memory, they still want the righteousness of being, when you're poor and you're trying to get rich, people forgive you for cheating. Right? It's okay to cheat to move from being poor to rich. It's kind of understandable, right? Well, they're trying to make their family a better place, so they cut corners. But then once they're up here, they still want to keep cutting the corners. But once you're up here, you get judged very differently for cutting those corners, right? Because now people can see, people didn't remember, that you're up there now. Like be in the present, right? Whereas be in the you now cutting the corners is bad, right? But in their memory that I have a right to, that's how I made it. That's how I made it, by cutting all these corners. I wouldn't be here if I played fair and I paid good, paid wages to my workers, or I paid school teachers. Right? So this has to do with self-image of past. And the same way, someone who starts out rich then becomes poor. There's a lot of millennials and a lot of people who, if you didn't take advantage of your social position and education at the right time, you sort of thought it would last forever, or you're being so pious, like, I'm donating and donating and donating, and it will come back to me because of karma. So I'll donate and donate and donate, right? And then they, are used to, they still think to be compassionate when they actually need to fight again to go back up, right? Because they don't, that's why some people, they leave social position, and they go and hang out with people who are not there. So, so it's always changing, and in the course of a good life, hopefully we'll have a range, of experiences. And experience some movement in social position, and to be conscious of how it affects our bodies and these brain chemicals. Now when we get back to Graha Yoga and the practice, that the asanas. So we talked about hierarchy of money mostly, but there's also hierarchy of youth, a hierarchy of beauty, sexiness, hierarchy of creativity. There can be, humans have the widest range of hierarchies. A hierarchy of musical skill, hierarchy of being able to cook, hierarchy of the sharpness of the senses, hierarchy of whatever. Going up and down, feeling sorry for people not as good as you at something, feeling loving towards people who are better than us at something. Now what the asanas do is the asanas create a separate hierarchy. Some poses, I'm the king. Everybody respects my intention more than my results. Right? If you're in a high position, it means people see your intentions more than your results. Okay, that's what high social status means. It means that your intentions are seen more than your results. When you're in a low social status, it means that your results are seen more than your intentions. Right? And so some yoga poses, I'm the king. I don't have to do any work, and I can just take my foot and I can stick it behind my head, okay? And like, wow, okay, no problem, right? Some other pose, like a back bend, I'm the pauper. The harder I try to back bend, the more I'm punished, right? No matter what my intention is, and then everywhere in between. So, and then I have to stay equally for 10 breaths in the pose of a king, in the pose of a pauper, and everywhere in between. So through the consistency of practice, the neurochemicals, in the yoga they say, boosts all the neurochemicals of happiness, and people feel happier. Because if you're a king, you can't get, you kind of want the feeling of being a beggar sometimes. Sometimes the king, is like, driving in his Mercedes, and, again, as you said, the different problems of wealth, oh my God, like, if I say the wrong thing, there's going to be a war, and oh my God, my daughter only has a choice between all these snotty princes, my daughter can't marry who she wants because I'll be judged, a kingdom will be judged, and obviously poor people think that their life sometimes would be better. If only I was rich, then I wouldn't have these problems, then people would listen to me and this and that.
That's why it will never gonna happen if the person feels like that.
Maybe, but still, some people are very motivated, like Mahatma Gandhi, he was motivated by being thrown off he was trying to be British, right? He protected the British against the black people in South Africa as a lawyer, okay? And he learned that he was working with this psychology of this hierarchy, and he was proud that he, as an Indian, as a middle-class Indian, was superior to the blacks in South Africa, okay? And that he got to ride, and then one day he was on the train in the beginning of the Gandhi movie, and even though he's a lawyer who makes a lot of money, a white train operator, okay, said, you're not better than me because you're educated and because you have money. You're not white. So get off the white person part of the train. Threw him off the train, right? And he remembered that. And he never ever wanted to go, he never ever wanted to be superior. He saw that was a game, right? That basically to get the blacks and the Indians to fight, to hate each other more than they hated the master. They're both trying to get something from the master rather than bring the master down. So that's what, then he became, his daughter became the president of India for a long time, or his granddaughter, Indira Gandhi, when we were kids, was the prime minister of India. So he didn't become prime minister himself. He did give it up and give it to Nehru. In a way, his lineage, his ancestry did. And that's another thing with Graha Yoga, is that is about our descendants. We're always thinking about them with our movements and our whether we have children or not, there's a part of us that's always acting in the best interests of our descendants, even if we haven't made them yet, whether we will or won't. So, this graha, is to work with this, and the asanas, therefore, give a kind of a complete range of physicalized experiences of all the different positions in the hierarchy, right? And I have to deal with my position, deal with who I am in this position, right? What do I do when I'm dominant? What do I do with my dominance? Am I compassionate with it, or do I try to just reinforce it? What do I do with my submissive poses? Am I loving with them, or am I self-hating? Right? Basically, what do I do with my dominance? Am I compassionate, or am I hating others with my power? Right? What do I do with my submission? Am I loving others, or am I self-hating by being submissive? So Graha Yoga, ideally, right, views submission as an opportunity to love others, right, rather than hate the self. And it uses dominance to have compassion for others instead of hating others.
And how do you want to provide the information? Through some philosophical lections, or?
Oh, I use it in the asanas, but
in the class?
Yeah, because the asana is based on two bandhas. Okay, the Uddiyana bandha resists the inhale, and the Mula bandha resists the exhale, because we need resistance to the breath to be safe. If it was up to my mind, my conscious mind, A, it's too slow, B, it has all these social preferences that are not necessarily in the best interest of my body. So it's important that a reflex and not me control my limits of my breathing, right? I would be dead by now if it wasn't the case. So my reflexes are more honest. My instincts are more honest than my habits. Okay, and those are the two classifications of reflex. Okay, you have instincts, which cannot be controlled or cannot be destroyed. They come from nature. But then we also have habits, right, which can be, although it takes a lot of effort, they were created more by society and family. Then those can be changed. So another distinction between Graha Yoga is what's a habit and what's an instinct. How do I know?
And to change maybe habits in accordance with your inner desire.
Well, mostly to get to, yes, habits will then try to be more like the instincts. Some people feel we get rid of all habits and just have instincts. But society requires more refined habits than just animal instinct. Like you have to speak Spanish when you're in Spain, and you have to speak German when you're in Germany, and you have to speak Arabic when you're in an Arabic country. You have to speak, Mandarin when you're in China. But those aren't instincts. Although there's an instinct when you're in a new country, you start to learn the language by instinct. At this point.
Yeah, maybe there is one interesting idea, because we perceive the information through the organs of perception, like you counted those. Then we interpreted the information or some object, we interpret it, and then we have the results of this interpretation in accordance with our previous experience, and we can charge the object to be positive, negative, and neutral. Yes, let's say. And when we lack of consciousness, it's all about maybe instincts, and we are just automatically react, for example, for something. And if the practice raises the consciousness, So there is the gap where you can not to react in accordance with your samskaras, but maybe to make some, choice of another kind.
Yes. Well, yes, and I have a very round logic, and I bring in a lot of stories, and sometimes I lose why I was telling the story because we got into the story. Supersizing compassion, saying I have compassion for all beings. The true threshold for spiritual compassion, for me, the definition of spiritual compassion is the ability, I don't know if it's possible, but spiritual compassion it is possible for people to have compassion without having had the suffering. If it is possible, since biology seems to say that you have to have had the suffering to have the compassion. But there are some people who, without suffering directly themselves, have compassion. Mm-hmm. Okay, and so that, to me, is spiritual compassion. Not the ridiculous, arrogant, ostentatious claim to have compassion for all beings. Okay, a monk, I will take it. Dalai Lama or a monk, someone who's been a monk their whole life, when they tell me they have compassion for all beings, I believe it because they paid in advance. They're not putting it on a credit card. Or maybe in my next life I'll be a monk. Right? I'll pay that. No, I'm being a monk now. So those guys and women and nuns, they deserve, and that's why I think the people who are non-monks who say mantras that are written for monks, they're stealing. They're stealing the position in society and the power. They're trying to have the virtue of a monk without the austerity. They're claiming the same virtue as a monk or nun with none of the austerity. Okay, and that to me is self-defeating for them. I feel pity, and I'm not really like, you should stop it because you're hurting other people. Although they are on many cases, but that they're just driving themselves mad, I think, and they're deluding themselves. They're not really connected in. Now, spiritual love, I think it would be then loving people without having had the same experience of joy. Because you can only love someone who you can mirror their joy, right? And that's why we love people, because people who are happier than us are teaching us how to be joyful the way they are, without trying to, right? The people who are naturally happy, and they're called lovable. Yeah. Being lovable is different than being loving. See, now the morality book says, oh, well, just be loving to everybody and then you'll get it back. It isn't true, right? How many people are so nice to everybody? They're so the nicer they are to you, the more you're like, get away from me. Why don't you just let me like you for you? Why are you trying to bribe me with being so nice? Right? As a kid, growing up with this hippie Buddhism, I was really nice to everybody. I was trying to be really compassionate. That's what I was rewarded for as a child, how nice I was and how I think of joy. The problem is that also being happy and joyful, it causes problems, creates well, here's the cycle. A baby learns to not scream, okay? Because it's eventually, as much as the parents love the baby unconditionally, the screaming forces the parents to try to get the child to be quiet. Right? When they can't bribe them and pacify them enough, they eventually lose their temper. Or it's just a threat, like a baby screaming, like causes the wolves to know where you're sleeping. Okay, so like in the interest of safety, or it's also threatening, right? Children are very honest too, right? Like you say, I hate the neighbor, such a jerk. But then the neighbor comes in, you're like, hey, neighbor. But then the kid comes in and goes, oh, actually, she just said you're a jerk. And then the family's in trouble, So the child learns to be dishonest, right? The child learns to lie and to be dishonest, learns to curb their violence, not to be threatening. Okay? Instead of when that landlord comes over, you just make a joke. Instead, oh, what a cute kid. Oh, and then the landlord's maybe, likes the kid. We all have as a primates, we have an instinct we want children to like us. Because we know in the future we're going to be old and they're going to be in charge. So that's why there's so much investment in young people, trying to please young people, and all the marketing is all focused to young people, because that's an instinct to survive. It's an insurance policy. So, and that's why when a little child ignores you or doesn't like you, it's like there's a fear. Oh my God, the baby doesn't like me. Oh shit, I'm 20 years from now, I could be in big trouble. Okay. Now, so then the child learns to protect the family by curbing their violence. Okay, by curbing their suffering, by not screaming, by not sharing their suffering. If you didn't share your suffering, the family would be better off. Because you're revealing our weaknesses to the outside world. So you're causing problems. Your suffering is causing problems for the family. So just tamp it down. So then the child goes, okay, I'll just be a ball of joy. I'll just be joyful. And that, wow, the more joyful I am, the landlord likes us more. Oh, people want to be nice to my family because of me, right? Because I'm so joyful. I'm the little ball of joy. Everyone, oh, hey, I remember my friend has a kid like him. Okay, now, so great, generate lots of joy. But eventually, too much joy also causes problems for the family, right? Because there's some other family that doesn't necessarily allow people to be so joyful, right? You're giving away our assets. You're revealing to people that hey, I'm so happy, my dad has money. Oh, the loan shark comes in. Oh, I heard you have money now. You owe me. Your child's running around in a new car. You didn't pay the debt, and you're buying a child a new car. So then the child learns to tamp down their joy in order to benefit the family, something like that. So, and that's the natural sort of cycle, I think, that kind of comes. And then we have to break. Then we become an adult, and we have these weird limits on our sharing suffering and these weird limits on our sharing joy, and we don't remember where they came from, right? Until we then do some yoga and some therapy and whatever to unpack them. We tell stories, or we find a partner, who has either a different story than us or a same story than us, and there's that mirroring process, and it all starts again. So that's at the heart of it, and it doesn't. I don't really want to invalidate the other. I don't want my method of yoga that I wish to share with other people and other people to have. It really is meant to just fill in some of the gaps, some of the claims. It's not. I don't really want to be in I've got the new thing, and I know, and the previous generation's all stupid, and they made all these dumb mistakes. I'm going to fix them all, and I've got all the answers. I'm aware that without the work that the other generations did, I wouldn't be able to refine this model. But basically, almost every yoga lineage starts with someone who is starting themselves. There's no lineage that goes on to, although some lineages they do that, right? We came from God, and then God found the teacher, and then the rest of us, right? It just becomes another aristocracy, but it's an aristocracy based on doing poses or discovering techniques or taking credit for techniques. So everything in Graha Yoga pretty much comes from some other source, and it's nothing new, but it is a very well, I think, thought out arrangement that's good for people. If you're a loving person, it's great. You might need to work on some compassion. If you're a compassionate person, it's great. You should work on some love, some joy. If you're a loving person, you should work on maybe being aware of suffering. Because people that say compassion is the way to go, they wind up being dominating or obsessed with suffering. Like instead of being happy, they'll go find some sad people to feel superior to. Okay, and people are addicted to joy. They're using joy too much. It actually ruins joy and pleasure to use it to avoid suffering. Mm-hmm. Okay. It's like it's sort of you're breaking even rather than getting high, right? Like drugs. So drugs, you feel high first. Then when you use drugs to avoid suffering rather than to feel euphoric, you need more and more just to break even. Right? And basically these drugs are social relationships mostly in our brain.
Okay, so we have to finish.
Yeah.
That's
maybe it's a lot. Braha yoga is complex but simple, and I'm glad I had a chance to talk about it. Yeah. You guys were fun to talk to.
Yeah, and maybe just the main thing is you want people to be conscious about what they read, even if it is considered to be a spiritual text, not just to accept as it is, but to think it over and to realize what it's like. Yeah, and to find really what is compassion, not to be like compassionate, but to find out what are you looking for. Practicing compassion, maybe you want to be super good, and this is not the best intention for practicing compassion. Just to be more, go into details and find out the nature of your...
Yeah, well, be aware of the dominant shadow. There's a shadow of dominance within compassion. Yeah. Because again, for good reasons. If I feel good helping you, now I want to help two people. Mm-hmm. Okay, helping one person after a while it becomes kind of boring if you're good at it. I want to help two people with the same energy.
At the same time, not to ignore, not to ignore your energy, your dharma maybe, and to get realized to fulfill your dreams in this life.
Yeah.
Because maybe cultivating this, you get more love and you can share your love. So just, to rethink or think over everything that is supposed to be taken like the fundamentals.
Yeah,
to be more conscious.
To trust the instincts, to trust the instincts and to respect nature, basically. Mm-hmm. That nature are the rules of the game, biology, right? Mm-hmm. So physics and chemistry intersect and make biology. And then consciousness needs, as far as we know, we don't know of any consciousness that does not live inside biology. Mm-hmm. The only other problem with the idea of the soul, the disembodied soul, is that it therefore allows for a morality that is independent of biology. So that's tricky.
Okay, guys. So thank you.
Thanks. It's great to be in Moscow.
Thank you, Dechon. Thank you so much.
A lot of fun. I hope. Please, if you're Buddhist and you chant compassionate beings, you can keep chanting it. I'm sure you have a good intention. Just try to be aware, though. But anyway, I'm sure it's your teacher gave it to you for good reason, and it is good. It's better than like saying I hate everybody or being cynical. Mm-hmm. But I think it's better to be compassionate to people who you can be compassionate to than to presume, claim. Mm-hmm. That's a little bit of trying to stimulate the drugs of dominance in one's brain. And loving everybody is to stimulate the drugs of submission in the brain, which we need. Those massage the brain. Those also need to do push-ups and pull-ups. Okay, and basically, compassion for all beings is like if you were to go to the gym, right, and do some push-ups on the bar, and I put all the weight on first, and I said, do a push-up. Would you be able to do one? Mm-hmm. No. Same with compassion for all beings. So, and loving everybody, basically, would be like if I took all the weight off. Would you get anything out of doing the exercise? No. But the goal is to find the right amount for you, right? That you get some resistance to your compassion, you know, and some support for your love, you know, or the other way around, some resistance to your love and some support for your compassion. And that's how we should interpret the outer world. Mm-hmm. And again, the asana sequence is a microcosmic hierarchy, right? Where some poses I can't do unless I develop more love for myself. Other poses I can't do unless I develop more compassion for myself. And mostly love and compassion should be expressed inward in Dharma practice and in yoga practice. It should be self-love and self-compassion. Compassion for others and loving others is more of a moral question. It has more to do with society and bigger questions that we can't control. But asana you can control. That's in your hands. How much you love yourself is up to you. How much you love others is not up to you. Mm-hmm. Because not everyone wants your love. Okay?
Yes.
And have the compassion for yourself is up to you. Because it's between you and you. How much compassion you have for others is not up to you. Because some people don't want your compassion. So that's why I think compassion for all beings is a little oversimplified, because what about the people that don't want your compassion, for whom your compassion actually hurts them? Okay? And what about the people who don't want your love, that your love for them actually makes them feel the opposite of pleasure? And we don't like to admit these parts about ourselves so much. And other people who may remind us of them, we mostly go, oh God, I'm not going to pay $50 for his workshop. To tell me not to chant to all beings, when all the great Buddhist teachers, you know, at least in the hippie era, have all sold and marketed this as some kind of cure-all, some snake oil. Anyway.
I think it's kind of a fresh view that derives from your experience. Interesting one.
I hope it's helpful, and I don't want it to. I don't know if it's. You tell me. I hope so. I hope it's good, and I'm trying to write it all down and put it in a book and stuff, so you can see. But this interview has been very helpful to share and to get out and all in one place. But I normally this is what my yoga students in New York, they're hearing this all the time while they're doing chaturanga yoga poses. Oh my God, do I love myself? Do I have compassion for myself? Oh. They get that while they're in the poses. Mm-hmm. So to talk about it without making people do poses at the same time is different for me.
Yes.
Because I'm used to having it happen in the class.
Okay, guys, so let's share this video for everyone, for all your friends, and let's feel compassion and love and find the balance.
Yes.
And to share with people who really want it or really need it, and feel ourselves and others, and to be mindful and feel full and empty at the same time.
Okay.
Спасибо всем.
Спасибо, ребята.
Спасибо, ребята.
Спасибо.
Пока.